Sanjay Chaturvedi, members of the real estate sector, and dear student friends. Thanks to ATRM for inviting me to grace this occasion and the first NatCon. In a way, I would say that Mr. Rajesh Chaturvedi has been very modest. He is actually a builder in the sense that the sector of real estate did not have a definition, and I learned about the definition. In each area, since real estate is a very distinct asset, non-homogeneous, in each area, each builder was a kind of a monopoly. And the way a monopoly builds its business is restrict the supply and maximize the price per unit and maximize the profit per unit. As a result of which the consumer was always at the receiving end. But that being the nature of the economics in a monopoly, one could not help, and we went along. As far as the construction sector was concerned, as I mentioned, the system was to reduce the supply and maximize the selling price. But all that has changed over the years, and things gradually moved slightly, though not fully in favor of the consumer, where today a builder need not be afraid that once I sell all my flats, then what happens to me, what happens to my business. In other words, there was a total change of a mindset, and then the real estate sector also saw economies of scale. And as that happened, the real estate sector became more and more similar to the other sectors, where I scale up, I go from the first threshold of growth to the next threshold of growth. After this project, there are 100 other projects which I can do, and therefore it's a large scale business. In the process, everybody benefits. And then efficiency became the keystone of this industry, which means speed became important, mechanization became important, quality became important, and the essence, the formula, the business model changed to fast throughput. That means I get into a project and I get out of the project with equal speed, and whatever profit I make, I reinvest it. So that was one significant change which took place in the industry. Now when the business model in the industry changes, so also the requirement for education and training. And I would like to, being from academics, like to emphasize the difference between education and training. Training is basic, training is fundamental. Training tells us how to do something. How to, that's a training or a training manual. But education tells us what are we doing, it makes us think. What are we doing? How are we doing things? Is there a better way of doing things? So the real estate sector has to move now from the training stage to the education stage. A lot of training is required at the mass, at the lower grassroots levels, for example, distribution, marketing, sales, construction. But planning and creating strategies for the industry to grow, that requires a higher level of education, and that is the next step for all of you. Which means that real estate offers you not just a job but an entire career, and when you go for a career, continuing professional development becomes important. I am saying this because gone are the days when a student says that for the first 25 years of my life I spend on studying, and the next 25 years I start earning. Today, continuing professional education means you have to take time off from your work every few years and then introspect and then retrain yourself, because the business models are changing. The old ways of doing business are over. And if you are willing to compete and if you are willing to stay ahead of the game, then the world is at your feet. So what happens when you acquire a professional certification from ATRM or any other institute? It means two things. One is you are tested for your competence and skill, and the other is you are willing to bind yourself to a code of conduct, which plays a very big role in the image of the consumer. That when the consumers see that the real estate sector is having a professional cadre, which is having a system of testing and certification, and where the members also bind themselves to a professional code of conduct, then the entire industry is seen by the consumers in different light. I'd also like to say that the real estate sector is not unidimensional. Don't look at the real estate sector as one industry. Look at it differently. The real estate sector is like a pool which is interdisciplinary. You can come from architecture, town planning, civil engineering, building and material sciences, electrical engineering, or from law, or from accountancy, or from finance or investment banking, or from land economics. All these professions have a role to play in the real estate sector. So what opportunity does it offer for students? You can be a real estate specialist and you can add on a legal qualification to that. Or the other way, you are having legal qualification, you can top it up with a real estate sector specialization. The choice is yours. Like every other industry, the real estate sector in the last 50 years, or in the last 10 years, or in the last 5 years has undergone rapid change. And change is the only constant. The way we have done business in the last 40 years is not the way we will be doing business in the next 40 years. Things are likely to change. And if you are agile and open to new ideas, then success is yours. There is talk of a real estate regulator. We have a ministry which is called Ministry for Urban Development and Poverty Alleviation. Although these two are both equally important, for some reason both these come under the same ministry. But some food for thought is why does real estate sector need a regulator? Or for that matter, why does any sector need a regulator? One way of looking at it is the basic purpose of a regulator is to prevent the domination of monopolies. And conceptually, the other purpose of having a regulator is for consumer protection. Whether you give the regulation of real estate to an existing regulator or whether you create a separate regulator, that's a matter of design. But the purpose of having a regulator is to prevent monopoly domination and to prevent the abuse of consumer rights. I'd like to see a day when the organization of the real estate sector in India is built along the lines of the real estate sector in Singapore. Although in scale and size, these are two completely different sizes. Singapore is small, India is large and huge. But the way a real estate project is planned, regulated and marketed by the chief marketing lead marketer is very similar to the way a prospectus is written by a lead manager in an IPO, due diligence review is carried out, and the marketing is done by the lead marketer, and there are disclosures, there is due diligence, and the way a consumer can approach the regulatory authorities. So just as you have an organized distribution in the securities markets, for example, National Highway Authority of India had a bond issue, railways had a bond issue. So like that, when a real estate builder has about 500 flats to sell, the documentation and the due diligence and the chief marketer, the process should be similar to what a lead manager follows. Then we will say that you have a professional cadre, you have a sector which is based and is running along sound management lines, and you will get the respect as an industry just like any other industry. On a final note, I would say that the IT sector also grew in a very unorganized fashion, and today it is one of the best in the world because they actually are competing with themselves. They are not competing with anybody else. Because there was no domestic market, they achieved the global standards. So if one industry and some Indians can do it, why not we build our real estate sector? There are lots of opportunity. I would like to say that the less that has been done, the more is the opportunity for us to do something. I leave you with these thoughts. Thank you.